Some people discover family secrets in old shoeboxes. Some find letters tucked behind loose baseboards. Me? I found mine on the wrist of a billionaire who just spilled a $300 glass of Chateau Margaux all over my freshly polished restaurant floor. My name is Brandon Hayes. I'm 26 years old. I wait tables at Vino Cielo, one of Phoenix, Arizona's most overpriced and undersauced fine dining establishments. And until last fateful night, I thought my father was a mystery that died with my mother's silence. I was wrong. I didn't know it yet. But that day was going to burn down everything I thought I knew about my family, my mother's past, and the kind of man who could abandon a woman and still find a way to sleep on 1,000 thread count sheets. Welcome back to Dad's Sweet Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, every villain in these stories thought they were the smartest person in the room. They were not. Subscribe so you never miss a story. The reservation came in under the name Griffin Harlow. I didn't know who that was. Cooper, the floor manager, walked past me during pre-shift lineup with that look he gets. The look that says, you're either about to make great money or great enemies. Table 12 tonight, he said, straightening his tie in the back of house mirror. Griffin Harlow, you know who that is? Should I? Cooper stared at me like I just asked whether the sun was important. He's the Griffin Harlow. Harlow Industries. Self-made billionaire. Started 3 tech companies before he was 40. Sold 2 of them, kept the third. He's worth about $4 billion, give or take a yacht. He smoothed his jacket. He tips 20% on the dot. Never more, never less. Like a machine. Great, I said. A generous robot. Don't be weird, Brandon. I set table 12 myself. Linen pressed, crystal spotless, candles at the right height. I wasn't nervous. I've waited on senators, athletes. A former vice president who sent his soup back twice. Rich people are just regular people with worse manners and better lawyers. Griffin Harlow arrived at 7:14 p.m. He was 61, maybe 62, distinguished in the way that old money makes men look distinguished, except I knew from Cooper that he'd built every dollar himself. Silver hair, sharp jaw, charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent. He walked like a man who hadn't been told no in a long time. Maybe ever. He was alone. That surprised me. Men like him usually travel in packs, assistants, yes men, someone to hold the phone, and someone to nod vigorously at everything they say. But Griffin Harlow sat down at table 12 alone, unbuttoned his jacket with one hand, and scanned the room with gray eyes that were calculating and tired at the same time. Good evening, I said, stepping forward. My name's Brandon. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with some water and a look at our wine list? He glanced up at me. Just a flicker of real attention, then back to neutral. Bring me the '09 Opus 1, he said, and I'll need a few minutes. Of course. The bottle felt heavy in my hands as I went to fetch it. I had no idea my calm routine was about to end. I poured the wine tableside. That's the thing about Opus 1. It deserves the theater. You open it, you let it breathe. You pour slowly, like you understand what you're holding. It's part of the job. Griffin Harlow watched me pour with the detached approval of a man who appreciated precision. He reached forward to receive the glass. And I saw it. His left wrist. The cuff of his shirt had ridden up, just an inch, maybe less. And there it was. A small red rose. Petals detailed and deliberate. Thorns curling into a figure 8. An infinity loop made of thorns. I know that tattoo. I've known that tattoo my entire life. It lives on my mother's left wrist. She got it when she was young. She always said that, when I was young, like it was a lifetime ago she didn't want to revisit. I used to trace it with my finger when I was a kid sitting next to her on the couch. She'd let me, but she'd go quiet. I learned early not to ask about it. Matching tattoos meant something to her once. My grandmother told me when I was maybe 15. Don't push her on it. I'd assumed it meant a lost friend, maybe a sister, maybe someone who died. It never once occurred to me it might mean a man. My hand stopped mid-pour. Griffin Harlow looked up. Son, I'm sorry, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Sir, I apologize for staring. It's just, I set the bottle down carefully. My mother has a tattoo just like that. Same design. Same wrist. The silence lasted maybe 2 seconds. It felt like a year. Then Griffin Harlow's hand, the one reaching for the wine glass, knocked it sideways. The crystal shattered on the floor like a gunshot. He didn't look down at it. He was looking at me. Those gray eyes had gone from calculating to something else entirely. Something cracked and raw underneath the polish. "What did you say?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Your tattoo," I said. "My mother has the same one. It's pretty unusual, the rose with the infinity thorns. I've never seen it on anyone else." "Your mother." He said it like he was testing the weight of the words. "Yes, sir. What's her name?" I hesitated. Something in his face, the color draining from it, the jaw tightening, the way he'd gripped the edge of the table, told me this wasn't small talk. "Erica," I said. "Erica Hayes." He went pale. Not the kind of pale from a cold draft or a bad memory. The kind of pale that happens when a ghost walks through a wall and sits down across from you. "Erica," he repeated, almost to himself. He stood up slowly, like his knees had forgotten how to work. "Where is she?" "I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment on the west side of Phoenix with my mother and my grandmother. My grandmother was a retired school teacher who made the best green chile stew in the state and had exactly 0 tolerance for men who didn't keep their word. My mother, Eric, she was genuinely brilliant, the kind of person who could explain anything to you and make it sound simple, and she worked her way from receptionist to operations manager at a logistics company over 15 years. She never complained. She never dated. Not once that I saw. She kept her personal history locked behind a polished smile and the occasional glass of wine she never finished. She had 2 things she wouldn't talk about: my father and the tattoo. I'd asked about my father exactly 3 times in my life. The first time I was 7, she said, "He's not someone we need to think about." The second time I was 16, angrier, sharper. "He chose a different life," she said. "That's all you need to know." The third time I was 21, and I'd had 2 beers, which made me brave. "Mom, I just want to know who he is. That's it. Just a name." She looked at me, her eyes drifting somewhere far away. "He made his choice, Brandon. A long time ago. And we are the consequence of it." I never asked again, but I never stopped wondering, and now I was standing in the middle of Vino Cielo, with a broken wine glass at my feet, and a billionaire looking at me like I was a door he'd welded shut 26 years ago and somehow left unlocked. I didn't say anything to Cooper. I told the busser to clean up table 12, asked the hostess to give the guests space, and I walked to the back hallway near the wine cellar to call my mother. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, baby. You're working. What's wrong?" "Mom," I kept my voice low. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Silence. "Brandon, the tattoo on your wrist. The rose. Did you get it with someone? Like, matching?" The pause that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. "Why are you asking me this right now?" "Because I'm standing 20 feet away from a man named Griffin Harlow who has the exact same tattoo on his wrist. And when I mentioned your name, he knocked his wine glass off the table." "Nothing, Mom. How does he look?" Her voice had gone very quiet. Something cold moved through my chest. "Like he's seen a ghost," I said. She let the silence hang for a heavy beat. When she finally spoke, her voice was controlled, tight like a wire pulled to its absolute limit. "Don't tell him anything else. About me. About you. About where we live. Nothing. Do you understand me?" "Mom, is he, Brandon?" Her voice cracked. "Just slightly. Just enough. Please, not tonight. I'll explain everything. Just don't give him anything." She hung up. I stood in that hallway for 30 seconds staring at my phone. Then I straightened my jacket and walked back out to table 12. Griffin Harlow had composed himself. It was a reflex for him, putting himself back together smoothly. He was seated again, a fresh glass of water in front of him, his expression smoothed into something that almost passed for casual. "Sit down," he said when I approached. "I'm working, sir. I'll pay for your time. Sit down." I sat. He looked at me, searching my face for something. I didn't know what it was, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "How old are you?" he asked. 26. Something moved behind his eyes. Math being done. Conclusions being reached. "Erica Hayes," he said. "She grew up in Scottsdale. It wasn't a question. Yes, I said carefully. She was studying business administration. She interned at my first company, Harlow Digital, in the summer of 1997. He spoke as if reading from a mental file. She was 22. Brilliant, absolutely remarkable mind. I was 35, and I had no business. He stopped himself, recalibrating. We were close. For about a year. Close, I repeated. The word sat between us like a grenade with the pin already out. I was married, he said, offering no apology, just the facts. My wife at the time, we had an arrangement, on paper, but it was complicated, and I handled it badly. Very badly. He looked down at his wrist, at the rose. Erica and I got these together. It was her design. She drew it herself. She had this way of making things beautiful that I've never seen since. I said nothing. When things ended, he paused. I chose my family, my wife, the business. It wasn't the right choice. I've known that for 26 years. He looked up at me. Is she well? The audacity of that question. Is she well? Is the woman you walked out on, who raised a son alone, who worked 60-hour weeks, who never once let herself be loved by another person because apparently you broke something in her that never fully healed, is she well? She's fine, I said. Griffin Harlow nodded slowly. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, heavy cardstock. Simple. Just his name and a number. I'd like to reconnect. If she's open to it. He slid the card across the table. And you, if what I'm thinking is correct, I'd like the chance to what? I said. To know me? He didn't flinch, I'll give him that. Yes, I looked at the card. I looked at him. I picked it up, slid it into my apron pocket, stood up, and said, I'll let you know. I didn't know it yet, but the next 3 weeks were going to change everything. And not in the warm Hallmark movie way Griffin Harlow was probably imagining. She told me everything that night at the kitchen table, over the kind of tea she only made when things were serious. Chamomile, honey, 2 mugs, no phones. She was 58 now. Still sharp, still beautiful in the way that women who've built their lives with their hands tend to be. But that night she looked older than I'd ever seen her. Like the walls she'd built had used up something she didn't have left to give. Griffin Harlow wasn't just the man who left her. He was the man who stole from her. We built the second company together, she said, her hands tightly wrapped around the warm mug. Harlow Systems. The tech platform that made him his real money. The core architecture. The routing system. The data structure underneath all of it. That was mine. I designed it. I worked on it for 18 months, nights and weekends, while he handled the investors. Mom. He put it in my name initially. When things were good. But when he ended things, when he went back to his wife, he had his lawyers restructure everything. He said I was a contractor, not a partner. He had paperwork drawn up retroactively. He had people who did things like that. She looked at her wrist, at the rose. I was 23 years old. I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have money. I had a baby, on the way that I hadn't even told him about yet. The kitchen went entirely quiet. I never told him about you, she said. By the time I knew I was pregnant, I already knew what he was. I didn't want him near you. I didn't want him to have one more thing that was mine. I sat with that weight for a long time. The company, I said finally. Harlow Systems. That's the one he kept. It sold last year, she said, for $2.2 billion. I did the math, and I sat back in my chair, and I thought about our 2-bedroom apartment, my grandmother's second-hand furniture, my mother's 15 years of 60-hour weeks, and the college loans I was still paying off. And then I thought about Griffin Harlow's charcoal suit, his $300 wine, and his 20% on the dot tips, like a generous, generous machine. Do you still have anything? I asked. Any documentation? Emails? Notes? Anything that shows it was your work? She looked at me for a moment, then got up from the table, went to her bedroom, and came back with a shoebox. An actual Nike shoebox, held closed with a fading rubber band. Inside were printed emails, handwritten design notes, and a copy of the original partnership agreement with both their names on it. There were old USB drives, and a spiral-bound notebook dated 1998 through 1999, filled with her architectural sketches for the very platform that had sold for billions. My mother had kept everything for 26 years, like she'd always known this day might come. Here's the thing about working in a restaurant. Word travels faster than food. By Thursday, the sommelier had told the hostess that I'd had some kind of intense personal moment with Griffin Harlow. The hostess told Savannah, the other server, that Griffin Harlow might be my long-lost relative. Savannah told half the kitchen that Griffin Harlow was definitely my secret father. By Friday, Griffin Harlow's assistant called the restaurant asking for my personal contact information. Cooper, being Cooper, gave them my email. I came in for my Saturday shift to find a message in my inbox that was 3 paragraphs of careful, lawyerly language that essentially said, Mr. Harlow would like to establish a relationship and is prepared to be generous. Generous. There's that word again. I showed the email to my mother. She read it twice, set my phone down on the table, and said, "Call Savannah's brother." Savannah's brother was a patent and intellectual property attorney who had made a minor reputation in Phoenix for taking on cases that other lawyers considered long shots. His name was Kyle, and after a thorough consultation, the highlights were clear. The original partnership agreement my mother had kept was, in his words, extraordinarily useful. The handwritten design notes in her notebook predated the patent filing by 14 months. The emails between her and Griffin, discussing architecture, crediting her work, using language like your system and your design, were, again in Kyle's words, a plaintiff attorney's Christmas morning. There may be a statute of limitations issue, Kyle said, turning a page of notes. But there's a recent precedent, IP theft cases, where the harm was ongoing, where profits continued to be generated from stolen work. The argument is that each sale, each licensing deal, constitutes a new act of harm. The $2.2 billion sale last year? That reopens the window completely. My mother sat perfectly still. How much? She asked. Conservative estimate? 20 to 40% attribution of original IP value. He did the math out loud. On $2.2 billion, that's potentially $400 million to $800 million. Before interest. Silence. The beautiful, specific silence of justice doing its arithmetic. Griffin Harlow called me directly on Sunday. I don't know how he got my number. Men with $4 billion get what they reach for. I'd like to have lunch, he said, bypassing any preamble. Just the two of us. I think we have things to discuss. Sure, I said. I know a place. I picked a diner in downtown Phoenix, not a fancy one, the kind with laminate menus, coffee that comes in a glass pot, and a waitress who calls everyone hun. I did that on purpose. I wanted him uncomfortable. He wasn't. Of course he wasn't. Griffin Harlow had the ability to be completely at ease in any room, because men who've never been humbled don't know what it feels like to be out of place. He ordered black coffee and a club sandwich. I ordered the same, refusing to let him have any symbolic advantage. I want to be straightforward with you, he started. I wish you'd led with that 26 years ago, I said. But go ahead. He almost smiled. I know what I did to your mother was wrong. The relationship, the way it ended, I was selfish and cowardly. There's no way to dress that up. He wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. But I want you to know, if I'd known about you, things would have been different. Would they? Yes, you sure about that? Because from where I'm sitting, you were pretty good at making things disappear when they stopped being convenient. That landed. I watched his jaw tighten, just slightly. I deserve that, he said. You deserve a lot more than that, I said pleasantly. But we'll get there. He looked at me for a long moment. You're like her, the way you think. The way you don't, I interrupted. Don't do that. Don't find traits of yourself in me and use them to feel connected. You don't get that yet. You might not ever get that. Silence fell over the table. What do you want? He asked. From me. Be direct. I took a sip of coffee. Nothing, I said. Right now, I don't want a single thing from you. That confused him. Men like Griffin Harlow understand the language of want, money, acknowledgement, power, access. What they don't understand is someone sitting across from them with nothing to ask for, because they've already got the wheels turning somewhere else. I didn't know it yet, but the lawsuit was going to be filed in exactly 9 days. Kyle filed the suit on a Tuesday morning. Erica Hayes v. Griffin Harlow and Harlow Industries LLC. Intellectual property theft. Unjust enrichment. Fraud. Breach of fiduciary duty. The complaint was 47 pages long and included, as exhibits, my mother's original design notebook, the 1998 partnership agreement with both signatures, 63 emails from a Harlow digital server that Griffin's team had apparently never thought to scrub, and 3 expert affidavits from software architects who confirmed that the platform's foundational architecture was identical to the design methodology documented in Erica Hayes' 1998 notebooks. It was filed at 9:02 a.m. By 11:15, Griffin Harlow called my cell. I let it go to voicemail. His recorded message was tightly controlled. Brandon, I think we need to talk before this goes further. I want to resolve this. I'm not your enemy here. Please call me back. I played it for my mother. She listened with her arms crossed and her face completely neutral. What do you want to do? I asked. Nothing, she said. Let Kyle handle it. He's going to come at this hard. He's been coming at things hard his whole life, she said. So have I. The difference is, I've got receipts. Griffin Harlow's legal team filed a response within 72 hours that was impressive in its aggression. They argued that Erica Hayes had been a contracted employee, not a partner. That the 1998 agreement had been superseded by a 1999 restructuring she had signed. That her notebooks documented employee work product, not independent IP. There was just one problem. My mother had never signed a 1999 restructuring agreement. Griffin Harlow's legal team had submitted a document with her signature on it, but the signature was forged. Kyle brought in a forensic document examiner, a woman named Dr. Brooke Merritt, who had testified in federal court 14 times. And within a week, she produced a 17-page report, concluding that the signature on the 1999 document had been produced using a digital copying method, and that the ink composition was completely inconsistent with 1999 paper stock. They had forged it. Whether 26 years ago or more recently, it didn't matter. The forgery was the move that changed everything. Kyle called me when the report came in. This just became a criminal matter, he said. I'm referring this to the Dawes office today. I sat down on the edge of my bed. Is my mom going to be okay through this? Your mom, Kyle said, is the toughest client I've ever had. She's been okay through everything. This is the part where other people stop being okay. He meant Griffin Harlow. He was right. I went back to work at Vino Cielo on a Friday. Cooper gave me a look that said he'd heard things, which meant everyone had heard things. But nobody said a word, because Cooper had managed to keep the staff quiet. I was refilling water at table 4 when the hostess touched my arm. There's someone here for table 12, she said. He asked for your section specifically. I turned around. Griffin Harlow was standing at the front of the restaurant in a light gray suit, and he looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. The polish was still there, but underneath it something had completely come undone. I walked to table 12 and stood across from him. I didn't sit. You're not going to make this easy, he said, his tone resigned rather than accusatory. I'm going to make this exactly as easy as you made the last 26 years of my mother's life. He looked down at the table. The forgery. I didn't know about that. I want you to believe that. My attorneys in 1999, I gave them instructions to restructure, and I didn't ask how. That's not an excuse, I know, it's not, I agreed. I'm prepared to settle, he said. Generously, more than. Kyle handles that, not me. He looked up. Then why are you talking to me at all? I thought about my mother at that kitchen table, her chamomile tea going cold because she was finally saying out loud the things she'd carried for 26 years. I thought about the shoebox, the notebooks, the 60-hour weeks, the 2-bedroom apartment, and the rose on her wrist that she'd never covered up because she wasn't the one who should be ashamed. Because I wanted you to see me, I said. Not as a problem, not as a liability, not as something to settle. I wanted you to sit in the restaurant where I work and look at your son and understand that everything you walked away from built itself just fine without you. Griffin Harlow said nothing. You wanted to reconnect, I said. You wanted to be generous. You wanted to find traits of yourself in my face. I straightened my jacket. You should have wanted that 26 years ago. I pulled my order pad from my apron. Can I get you something to drink? He stared at me, his voice breaking slightly before he cleared his throat. I'll have water. I'll send someone over, I said. And I walked away from table 12 and didn't look back. The settlement came 4 months later, $640 million. Erica Hayes, my mother, the woman who raised me on 2 jobs and green chili stew and a silence she wore like armor, received $640 million in compensation for the work that had been taken from her when she was 23, pregnant, and utterly alone. She cried once, when Kyle called with the final number. Just once, for about 30 seconds, sitting at that same kitchen table, with the same mugs. Then she wiped her face and said, "I need to call my mother." My grandmother picked up on the first ring. "Grandma," my mother said, "I need to tell you something." I stepped out of the kitchen to give them privacy. I stood on the apartment balcony in the warm Phoenix evening and looked out at the city sprawl, the mountains in the distance turning purple in the fading light. I thought about the specific, irrefutable justice of a shoebox kept at the back of a closet for 26 years by a woman who never stopped believing that the truth of what she'd built was worth holding on to. Griffin Harlow did not go to prison. The DA declined to prosecute, citing the age of the forgery and evidentiary challenges. His legal team released a statement saying he had reached an amicable resolution and looked forward to moving forward with integrity. His PR people earned their money that week. I did not see him again. I didn't need to. My mother bought a house in North Scottsdale. It isn't ostentatious, she's not that woman. It has 4 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a garden where she grows things, and a room turned into an office. She's already consulting for 2 tech startups who discovered, very quickly, that Erica Hayes understands systems architecture better than anyone they've ever hired. She still has the tattoo. She'll keep it. Not because of him, but because she designed it when she was young. It's beautiful, and it is hers. The rose was always hers. It was never his to begin with. As for me, I still wait tables on weekends. Not because I have to, but because I'm good at it, and because it turns out the best place to understand people is across a table when they don't think you're paying attention. I'm always paying attention. Just ask Griffin Harlow. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.